Hello, this is Mr. Davis, and these are the Style Pile Notes. These notes are a series of lessons that are designed to help writers add sentence variety and style to their writing so that we can go beyond simple sentences such as, my dog ran, to more complicated and stylish structures like, my dog, the beautiful, courageous pug, ran hideously slow. These lessons are brief, free of overly complicated grammar jargon, and should be accessible for all learners. So, what do you need to do these Style Pile Notes? If you're in my class, ask for a copy, or if you're not in my class, print a copy of the Style Pile Notes. Here's how it works. Watch the lessons while filling in your notes. You only need the parts that are in red font. If you want to take down more notes than what's in the red font, you're free to do so. Okay, so today's Style Pile Notes are going to focus on using multiple adjectives to describe a noun. So, in your first box of your notes, you should put using multiple adjectives to describe a noun. So here are the rules and examples, okay? Your first rule is that commas must separate the adjectives. So you're going to have multiple adjectives. If you forgot what an adjective is, it just gives you more information about a noun, like big man. Big is the adjective. When you have multiple adjectives, you separate them with the comma. So big, comma, hairy, man. Second rule is you must be able to put and between the adjectives, and the sentence still has to make sense. So if we look at this example below, it says, the older, cooler teacher. Let's check our two rules. Rule number one, commas must separate the adjectives. Older is telling us more information about the teacher. He's older, it's describing her. Cooler is telling us more information about the teacher as well. So there's another adjective. In between we've got a comma, boom, we're good. Second rule, we should be able to put and between the adjectives. So if we put and here, let's read the sentence and make sure it still makes sense. The older and cooler teacher. That makes sense. In fact, if you wanted to, you could write the sentence as the older and cooler teacher, and that would be perfectly fine. However, throwing this comma in as instead of this and is just another way to add some sentence variety and style to your writing. So, based on the two rules that we just learned, I want you to think, is this correct? Take a moment, pause the video, and decide, is this correct? Hopefully you took a moment to pause the video and decided whether or not this was correct. If you said it was correct, well, guess what? You're right. When we look at this example, it follows our two rules. Old is an adjective that tells us more about the cheese. Moldy is an adjective that tells us more about the cheese. Smelly is an adjective that tells us more about the cheese. In between these adjectives, we have commas, so we follow rule number one. Check! We also have this example at the end. Fresh tells us about this cheese. Young tells us about this cheese. So in between them, we've got the comma. Check again for rule number one. Rule number two, we have to be able to put and in between the adjectives. Old and moldy and smelly. Oh, that should be a D. Woo! And smelly cheese is far better tasting than fresh and young cheese. Now, a whole bunch of ands in one sentence I don't think sounds that great, but technically it's grammatically correct, so boom, rule number two is followed as well. Alright, now let's move on to the use it box. I want you to describe the best qualities about yourself using multiple adjectives to do so. Pause the video, take a moment, describe yourself in that third use it box using multiple adjectives to do so. So this is just one example of what it could look like. I am the smarter, wittier Davis child. I completely agree with that, by the way. If you met my brothers, you would know too. No, I'm just kidding, just in case they're watching this video. But let's check our two rules. Rule number one, we need a comma separating the adjectives. Smarter is describing the Davis child, so that's correct. Whittier is describing the Davis child as well. In between these two adjectives, we've got a comma. Boom, we followed rule number one. Rule number two, we need to be able to put and in there. So I am the smarter and wittier Davis child. That grammatically makes sense. Boom, we followed both rules. Like I said, you can write the sentence with the and in there, but it's just not as stylish as putting this comma instead. Check your answer. If you're not sure if you've done it correctly, check your 2 rules, and if you're still not sure, call your teacher over to check it as well. Here are some more examples here. We've got multiple adjectives separated by a comma. And again, the second example, multiple adjectives separated by a comma. Notice we've got 3 adjectives in the second one. You could string together 5, 6, 10 adjectives. It might get a little bit long with 10 adjectives, but you can do it as long as you follow our 2 rules. Your job now, add multiple adjectives to your writing to add style and flair to your writing. The smart, stylish writer knows not to overdo it when it comes to using multiple adjectives to describe a single noun. Thank you for using these Style Pile videos. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask your teacher.